Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time here on the East Coast, just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the booming metropolis I like to call Ambler, PA. Noon Eastern time, LinkedIn Live, Thursday. You know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, your favorite look at all things HR. I'm going to restart. I felt off. Sorry, Joanna, just to give you a little background, my train was canceled today. So I rode my bike in from the city. So
you're sweaty.
Like, yeah. I mean, I did wet my hair. This isn't sweat in my hair, but you get the idea. So I'm going to start it from the top.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time here in Ambler, Pennsylvania, the booming metropolis, just outside of your favorite city this weekend, Philadelphia, PA. Ambler, noon Eastern time, Thursdays. You know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live, your weekly look into all things HR, talent acquisition, artificial intelligence, talent management, and so much more. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion find the right work. If you're familiar with anything Phenom, I am sure you have heard that before, and it is not a typo. It is the reason why we host this podcast every single Thursday, why we have another fantastic podcast with Cliff Yurkowitz, which airs monthly on Mondays. So check that out. It's called Unusual Attitudes. Why we have a plethora of fantastic webinars, one of which our guest today, Joanna Keel, just hosted. So we're going to dive into that. Why we are at every single HR tech event under the sun, and why we host my favorite conference, I Am Phenom. Whether it is in Philadelphia, Paris, or in India, it is certainly something that you want to miss. So if any of that interests you at all, run on over to phenom.com, check out our webinars, check out the other podcasts, and register for I Am Phenom. Well, now that the bills are paid, it is time for Talent Experience Live. And today, we have a very special episode. For most of you, I'm sure you are aware that this Saturday is the 4th of July. And yes, I'm sure you'll be tuning in to the Paraguay-France matchup. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're not breaking down World Cup stuff. Instead, we are talking about the AI deepfake revolution and declaring your independence from candidate fraud. This has been a hot topic here all across the HR industry, really, but specifically here at Phenom. I mentioned we just did a webinar with Joanna. We also had a previous TXL that we replayed last week called Candidate Fraud with Checker. But it's something that continues to come up, whether it is AI-generated resumes, deepfakes, proxy candidates. Fraud in the talent acquisition industry is not something that's new. It is certainly something that is ramping up with some AI tools. So today we're going to talk about some things that may have changed, some things to look out for, and all things candidate fraud as a whole. And of course, if you're interested in learning more, head on over and check out the webinar. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So without any further hesitation, here is Joanna Keel, product marketing manager, to talk about candidate fraud. Joanna, how are you?
Hi, I am great. Happy almost 4th of July.
Yes, no, it's an exciting time of year. 4th of July is one of my favorite holidays because it's not about gift giving. It is about, being outside, enjoying fireworks, less family than Thanksgiving most of the time, which depending on your family could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. But overall, it's just a good time. The kids are running around playing. I always imagine it with you're running through sprinklers or at slides or whatever it may be. It is always fun. So happy 4th of July, and thank you for spending it with me. I appreciate it. You're much better than my family.
Hopefully it's everyone's Friday today with the holiday falling over on Saturday.
Yes.
I know I sure am thankful for a long weekend.
Yes. Well, let's get right into it. We don't want to keep people from their holiday weekend. I know I mentioned fireworks, big part of the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence, the whole nine. So let's start with the fuse of this. Why has hiring fraud become a fireworks show that nobody really asked for? All of a sudden, we are seeing it pop up and explode in people's faces, and it could be a bomb that lights up your entire organization. So why is it becoming more rampant, and how did it really start?
Yeah, honestly, think about it. Remember when it was just, a little bit of resume embellishment? Boy, we were missing those days. think about AI. It's really lowering that barrier. A candidate can generate a resume in minutes, right? They can script fake interview answers. They can pull off a deep fake even in a screening call. So they're using tools that are, by the way, cost nothing, and they take minutes. So that's why the scale and the sophistication has just exploded. But here's the one thing I really want to call out in that of like, why is it so much bigger? But it's because fraud isn't just one thing. I wish it was. I wish I could come here and be like, this is the one thing you need to look at because now you will not have fraud. Unfortunately, we're not going to say that today. This is an entire pipeline problem. It's a surface area. So we see fraud lighting up this part of this different stage, or maybe it's this part of the screening, this part in the interviewing. And what's happening is that HR has tools that are, the whole reason they were built is to just stand alone and look at this one moment. But that's the problem, is these one moments, they look amazing because it's a scripted answer. And if you're the recruiter, maybe not in every single interview, because you're probably not, you have other things to do. If you're only looking at a moment of time, that moment of time looks really good. And then what happens is that you don't catch it to the end. So in traditional, we'll go with 4th of July matter, we're seeing a lot of recruiters bringing sparklers to a fireworks fight.
Hey, sparklers are fun, but you're not in a fight, right? You need at least Roman candles to go up against this battle, if not more firepower. You mentioned there the resume embellishment a little bit. And I mean, I have to ask, are you proficient in Microsoft Excel like the entire rest of the world, or Microsoft Word like we all put on our resumes and things like that? Of course we are now, right? We're ingrained in it. But those little embellishments, I think, were always something where you could begin to ramp up your skill set. It wasn't really a concern if you maybe hired somebody or brought somebody in an interview who wasn't as efficient in some of those technologies as they once were. But let's start stage by stage. Let's start about what is happening at the top of the funnel. What is changing at the application stage, and what real world patterns are folks beginning to see to identify that fraud is present, right? I'm not saying that you can pinpoint that there is a fraudster who has applied and tricked you. How can people start to see these sort of trends that say, hey, we may have a fraud problem here?
Yeah, and they're all so different. So at that application stage, starting there, and we'll work our way down. This is a volume game. It comes in fast. Think bot floods, duplicate resumes. Maybe it's under different names, fabricated credentials. Hey, I'm a nurse. I'm not. Or maybe it's geo anomalies where the IP just doesn't match where the candidate's claiming to be. So we've actually heard this from a really large Canadian financial institution. They flagged exactly that. They had location data from applicants that just simply did not add up. So the candidate said, I live here, but their IP address said something completely different. So that's not just a little red flag. That can be a firework, right? You should not let those into our pipelines. So, but without this automatic detection, that can just sail right through. So what's really cool about catching it early is that the downstream impact, right? If you get this fraudulent or bad actor at the time of application, that's wasting your time. That is diluting your pipeline quality. And it's also could create, depending on your industry, some real compliance exposure. Yeah. So we all know this, and I don't know, Devin, in your past experience as a recruiter, but a DNH candidate who just changes her name, right, and then reapplies, this is not hypothetical. This is a pattern, and it's happening more and more and more. So the defense of this is consistency, right? It's asking questions like, is that profile coherent? Have we seen this resume before? Or have we, but under a different name? Does the location match where this person applied? And then if we're covering all these questions at different stages, this is where, to your bottle rocket reference, this is where you can actually make sure it's going to land somewhere safe rather than just hoping and praying when you light that off that it just doesn't hit anyone that's watching.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's happened more than a few times, right? Where somebody's changed their name, they've uploaded a new email. And as I used to do back in the day, combing through resumes manually, you pick up on some little things, maybe some common, jobs in the past, things where they didn't completely scratch their whole resume. But there's also folks who are a little bit, craftier, and they omit certain, places that they worked and things like that, which they may have been a D&H before because they worked at a direct competitor or whatever the, non-compete may be, a plethora of different reasons.
Sure.
But you can't catch all of those at once, right? And let's say you're out sick or perhaps celebrating the 4th of July on Friday, but your Canadian counterpart is not because they celebrated on Wednesday, Happy Canada Day, right? These things all happen. So you need some level of technology to start to hone in on it and to start to pick up on these little red flags so that they don't blow up in your face. Inevitably, there are going to be cracks that happen. There are going to be leaks and people that can circumvent these things. It is human nature, right? As long as there have been rules and laws, there have been humans to try and break them. Fraudsters are no different. So moving on to screening after somebody gets through, how is AI-assisted interviews kind of really becoming the it item? I see it on TikTok all the time of people taking Vaseline and kind of wiping their camera on their iPad or whatever it may be and reading, I know that is probably parody and not the case. Another thing, it's, score 100 on your test or whatever the case may be. But I think people are using it all the time, and it may not be deepfakes because that's a little bit more advanced technology. I'm sure we'll get there. But simply having ChatGPT on your phone with the volume all the way down as you re-answer questions. How is this happening, and how are people beginning to track it? And what can we do to identify it and combat it as talent acquisition professionals so that they don't get to that next stage in the funnel?
Yeah, absolutely, Devin. And seem to know a lot about cheating in the screening stage here.
Joanna, I all right, hold on. Before you go, I cheated on my business ethics final. So yes, I 100% do. And the irony there is I apologize. I was very young and naive. It was a Starbucks cup. I had like one of the sleeves, and I looked at. Yes, I do know a lot about cheating when it comes to tests, Joanna. But I promise I'm a better human being now as I look at my cheat sheet for notes for this interview. But carry on. I cut you off.
Well, I can tell you bring a lot to our team, and you have a lot of behaviors that are not cheating, really. So
thank you.
Anyways. But so you're right. Screening, this is where it gets very interesting, right? So that candidate's excited, right? Put yourself in the candidate's shoes. They are absolutely using ChatGPT to polish answers. The best candidates are. So they show up. Maybe they're nervous. They want to make sure they come off good. So how do you know how much is that cheating? Is it cheating, to prep for something, right? Or to have notes? You have to ask yourself that as a team. Or is it cheating, right? To have just drop it in ChatGPT and then you're just looking down and reading it to your point, right? So those are the things, those nuances that have to be flagged to the recruiter so they can understand the difference between a nervous candidate and a candidate who is completely cheating. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we've seen off-camera coaching. So the answers look totally fluent. They're amazing. They're technically correct, but they're completely manufactured. And to your point earlier about like everyone's a pro at Excel. What if I dug deeper on that? What if right away in the interview or in the screening, I said, what's your favorite thing about it? Can you tell me your favorite shortcut? Yeah. That right there. But a lot, you're not trained to do that. You're trained as a human to want to trust. But when you see these patterns sort of line up, that's where you can catch it. So we've even seen this. We had an insurance carrier. They actually told us that they had duplicate resumes. So it's the same experience blocks, like the same, but different names. And they were moving across different jobs. So the candidate wasn't just gaming one job. They were lighting up their entire pipeline. But what stands out here is that it's a consistency check, right? One recruiter who owns this job and one recruiter that owns this job wouldn't necessarily know that this is a duplicate resume because you're locked into hiring for that job. So it's making sure that something is monitoring this so that when these duplicate things are coming in, you can have those signals stack up.
Yeah. And it's competitive within organizations, Joanna. I'll tell you firsthand, it is not uncommon for recruiters to almost fight over a candidate, right? To say, no, like I'm gonna move him, I'm gonna get him to the hiring manager first so we can extend an offer. And it puts the candidate in a real awkward way.
Yeah.
But there's no way, to your point, to identify some of those inconsistencies without open lanes of communication and going through. And to your point, it is a bit of a gray area, right? As to interview prepping and going through that. For years, there has been entire industries built on it, right? Crafting your resume or resume building classes or whatever it may be. Interview prep, career coaches, all of these things have been around forever. It's just identifying where you're overselling your Excel skills and you don't truly know what a VLOOKUP is versus saying that you're proficient in Excel, right? And there is a fine line. The stage where it gets really scary, I think, is the interview stage. And I had a conversation with Amit Fernandez from Checker just a few short weeks ago. We re-aired the episode last week. But he had mentioned they were working with gig work organizations. So food delivery, rideshare, all those sorts of things. And through their database, they were able to connect, I believe it was 15 different candidates or hires using the same social security number across 7 different states, right? Now, that is vastly different than making up that you know a little bit more about Excel than you do. And there's a plethora of reasons why someone may be doing that. We won't get into the intricacies, but overall, you're not being truthful for who you are. I want to ask you, how do we identify this sort of fraud mid-funnel? How are organizations combating it right now? I know how Checker did it because they were able to compile that data together. But if there's somebody at home who's just looking to the interview stage and be like, hey, something feels off here. For years, there has always been the famous candidate swap, right? Where you hire somebody to interview for you, especially for remote roles and for some of these technical roles where they have people that can kind of do that professionally. How do recruiters and talent acquisition teams identify this and hopefully combat it?
Yeah, so it goes back to that point is when the recruiter is looking at the one piece that they were involved in, that's invisible to anyone. That's not even the recruiter's fault, right? No one can catch a single moment. And that's where it gets tricky. You need to apply it across everything. So we've seen, similar to that gig that you talked about, a North American bank, they saw inconsistencies between rounds that no individual recruiter would have caught on their own. Everything looked fine, but the patterns is what didn't. Right. So, and we've seen, in addition, another industry, IT services. This is the nightmare. They had someone interview and then the person that showed up was not that person. So that's like the scariest thing imaginable, right? But it's happening and that's not a resume problem. That's not a screening problem. That's a problem that ran the entire pipeline, but just sadly revealed itself at the finish line. Mm-hmm. So really the point here is that it's about consistency. So it's making sure every single touch point, the voice patterns, the facial geometry, maybe it's behavioral indicators across the rounds. So when one session looks like a firework, right? But the compound signals across the journey are just red flag, red flag, red flag. That's where it could be a problem. So, yeah. And we have seen just alone it was about 20% script reading, and now it's up to 59%. So, and that really just depends on the industry. So these aren't edge cases anymore. It's a pattern, and it's truly invisible unless you have that view.
Yeah. It's a nightmare scenario. You mentioned somebody who was hired, who wasn't, who showed up to work on day one, who wasn't what you expected, right? It was a completely different person. And I challenge, the industry really, when you sign on for a job, specifically here in the States, you have to provide some sort of identification, right? So it's either a passport, it is, driver's license, a state ID, whatever those things are. And there's a reason why they all come with pictures, Joanna. It is so that you can say and look who you say you are. I liken it to traveling, right? When you go through your airport security, you have to, I mean, I don't have clear, but I have TSA pre-check, and now I just step up, it scans my face, says you're good to go, right? That's for flying a plane, which is obviously we need to be safe when we're traveling through the air. But when you're working across industries where you're dealing with pharmaceuticals, where you are dealing with, individuals' banking information, where you are dealing with proprietary data, all sorts of things, why aren't we taking the same precautions as we are when you're hopping onto a plane as a passenger? Anyway, I digress. You mentioned that these aren't edge cases anymore, that they are patterns. Yeah. What does the fraud landscape really look like across industries? Are we starting to see it happen in one specific industry? Is it everywhere all at once, all at the same time? What is it looking like, and what are you hearing from the industry right now?
Yeah, so we've looked at a lot of different industries, and we've heard from a lot of customers. So we can say each industry has its own signature. And by the way, each role within those industries kind of do too. So it's not a clear sky that you can see it all. You can't take what financial services is doing and maybe apply it to healthcare. We've seen in financial services, we had a health insurance provider specifically. They saw different candidates appearing between interviews and pre-boarding. And they also had these suspicious geo patterns in applications, right? So these are real flags that we were able to surface that's going in their pipeline, and they might not have even known about it had we have not done that for them. Yeah. We've seen insurance carriers, right? They've confirmed proxy interview incidents. So they had 2 in a single week. Healthcare, in the news a couple of years ago, that Operation Nightingale alone uncovered there was close to 8,000 fake nursing diplomas. So real people acting as fake nurses, right? That's a problem. Technology, for example, they're having issues with remote roles that no individual recruiter can catch, right? Because just a moment of time. We've also seen code assessment cheating or geo anomaly patterns again, or identity mismatches across stages. So the really only way to figure this out is to look at the whole sky, what industry you're in, and what are you most likely to encounter across all of those stages.
Yeah. Now, and there was another story, I think it was just like a couple weeks ago about, I want to say it was like a Harvard president or something like that, who had faked her college education. Don't quote me on that because I don't have the sources or anything like that, but I'm going through the Rolodex of all of these, crazy things. And most of them aren't like the show Suits, Joanna. They don't end with happy endings where somebody fakes a law degree and then eventually passes the bar. This is serious stuff, right? It's not a sitcom. You mentioned the whole sky there. How does someone do that? I want to allude to the Recruiter Signal dashboard here, but I'm no expert, just like I'm not an expert in that Harvard article that I mentioned there. So I'll hand the floor over to you.
Yeah. So the dashboard, what is Devin really asking? He's asking what is this view? You keep talking about all these different checkpoints, and that's all that it is, right? So when fraud signals something, we can flag it. So then the recruiter can go check it, right? Sometimes something that's flagged is not a big deal at all. So for example, maybe it's candidates' facial geometry change between interview round 1 and interview round 2. Well, is it because I had my hair down in round 1 and then round 2 I went like this and I didn't wear my glasses? For a human, they can decide right away, oh, that's the same person. And then they can just dismiss it. Done. But these things, you don't know what you don't know, right? But when there is this certainty of 87% confidence that this person is not the same one that's showing up between these two, that human can make the call and then escalate. It gives you timestamps and you know where to go. So if you're checking an interview recording or looking at a screening, or maybe there was a background check of something that just is not adding up to everything of maybe where the person applied. Maybe you asked in an interview question of, are you willing to work in this state? And then they're on some sort of DNH match list, right? That they can't be hired over there. So there's so many different things that are flagged. And they're flagged to go, hey, go look at this flag. What do you think? Is it something that is that we should care about, or was it just that nervous candidate we talked about that was looking down, but they were very nervous, maybe not cheating? These are the flags that the human is very easy to go, yeah, I can dismiss that, or oh no, yeah, this is someone who is clearly cheating. This is not a person that we want on our team. So, and we've seen that. We had a light actually share their story at I Am Phenom about all the warning signals that they saw across their jobs. So we're really helping make sure who you hire are who they say they are, and they're bringing the skills to your team that you're expecting them to bring.
Yeah, no, it's important. And some of these things can be solved with something as simple as a phone call, right? If you're getting these flags, right? And it could be someone's residence. It could be that their face doesn't line up, right? And you can kind of build, I don't want to say a case, but potentially if they never answer when you call, right? It's always 2 or 3 hours when they call back. And then if that's the case, ask a simple question, right? Almost like a security question as you're going to, you forgot your password. It's, hey, I wanted to check, was going through the background check, saw, this address. Can you confirm that this is where you live? It's yes or no. If they have to pause, if they have to look it up, again, that's building that confidence that this is a fraudulent case and you may want to pass on that candidate. Of course, the technology, I say all that because the technology will never make the decision for you, right? It is not going to DQ any candidate based on some of the inconsistencies that it identifies. But overall, it's exciting to see this technology working. It's horrifying to know that we have to, but there are always going to be scammers, fraudsters, and everything because people always look for shortcuts. Joanna, that's why it's one of my favorite images is you see the sidewalks where it's kind of like a T shape and there's always the dead grass like in between because humans are always going to find a way to try and get from point A to point B faster, even if it isn't necessarily ethical. Joanna, obviously we've offered a lot of information to the folks at home today. I want to kind of wrap this up, put a nice little bow on it before we jump into some fun ones. If an organization is looking to start to combat fraudsters, to combat to declare independence from candidate fraud, if you will, where should they start today? Where can they go?
Yeah, we hear this all the time. Is like there's a lot of fear. You don't know what you don't know. Do you have fraud going on? How do you know? What do you do? Do you go to a point solution that looks at this? Where? What do you do? The answer is you start by partnering with someone that can help you uncover what could be going on in your organization. So it's understanding that fraud signature. So like I said, not every organization has the same risk. So that IT services, we talked about them, they hire remote roles, right? So they're going to be looking at a different fraud signature than that healthcare example, right? That maybe that's more credentialing. Or maybe it's retail that's high volume. They have, hundreds of applications per role. And maybe there's some bad actors in there. None of those look the same. So you need to partner with someone that can really understand that. And how Phenom approaches it through our hypercell. And not only is that just a fun word, but really it's just a really easy way to break down. We look at your industry, your hiring model, your geography, your role, your workflow, and we determine which threats are the highest priority for you, right? And then we can work together to make sure that you're checking the things that your team, so then who you're hiring becomes those team members you want to retain. So the smoke doesn't have to clear before you move, right? You just need to know what part of that sky that you're really watching and that you're responsible for.
Yes. Yeah. Look out. Enjoy your 4th of July fireworks. You don't want them in your office. Joanna, no. we have 2 quick bonus questions for you, sticking along with the 4th of July theme. Selfishly, I like these because I think they'll make great clips for the internet. So we'll jump right into them. We can clip them up and get them out just in time for the holiday. Sure. The Declaration of Independence, it starts with, we hold these truths to be self-evident. In hiring, what used to be self-evident that technically is not anymore, or you feel isn't anymore?
Ooh, good question. This is really capturing that confidence crisis that we're all going through. So for a long time, hiring operated as self-evident truths. You got a great resume. What did that mean? Someone had good experience. You had a polished interview. Someone has some good skills, right? Strong credentials meant, hey, they earned them. None of that is self-evident anymore, Devin. None of it. A great resume, AI, 4 minutes. A polished interview, there was an AI coaching tool running in the background. Great credentials, I just said I have them. You never check. The declaration was written because the founders needed to prove what they believed to be true, to lay out that evidence. And that's exactly what the fraud detection within organizations is going to do. It doesn't have to take things on faith anymore. It's going to validate it, because in 2026, self-evident is not good enough anymore.
Yes. No, I love that. If people haven't been truthful for a long time. We heard about Photoshop, AI generated photos, the whole nine. They're not who they say they are. Be self-evident. Show us your real resume. Show us your real work experience, and then you'll get the job if you're truthful. Last one. The declaration promises life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's the recruiter version of that, and what does a fraudster steal from that? I know it's not the Declaration of Independence like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure. What do they steal from life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if fraud is evident?
Great movie. But recruiters, they deserve life. And what does that mean? Real candidates, actual human beings that want to do the job, not bots, not proxies. They need people. They also deserve liberty, which is freedom from their own pipeline. They need to be able to make a confident decision without wondering, was that fabricated? Is this person coached? They need to make sure that the person they've interviewed, the person they hired, and that liberty has been quietly eroded. And fraud did that to them. But they also deserve the pursuit of happiness. And so to me, what that means in recruiting is that hiring great people means moving fast. So that happiness of building the team and being that human person to make sure they can do that is what that means for a recruiter.
Awesome. Joanna, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you have a happy 4th of July. I hope you get to watch all the fireworks, have a great barbecue, enjoy your time off, because I don't think anyone in the United States is working on Friday, at least from a corporate perspective. I'm sure restaurants and all sorts of bars and things like that will be going crazy. But that's busy season. They'll enjoy it. Joanna, have a wonderful weekend. Any final thoughts before we go? Any parting shots?
No, just happy New Year's.
Hey, keep that in. There we go. That's perfect. Joanna, have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Talk soon.
Bye. That was Joanna Keel talking all things around candidate fraud, declaring your independence from it. If you missed any of today's episode, it'll be on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube right now. You can catch the replay on LinkedIn, or always listen on Spotify, Apple Music. If you want to listen while you drive, maybe down the shore this weekend if you're on the East Coast. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. It is a long one. Can't wait to see you next Thursday, because we do this every damn Thursday. And once again, be safe. Don't play with fireworks. Thanks. Have a great day.